Welcome to the Uncanny Academy of X-Men lore. I'm Jared, and today we're going to be talking about House of M, one of the best Marvel events of all time. Now, just want to make sure you guys know that we did see Black Widow. We have choice thoughts about Taskmaster, but we're going to save that for our discussion about it this weekend, so keep a lookout for that. There will be much ranting because of how they treated Taskmaster. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. And anyway, we're talking about House of M. And I think that this was the way for like Marvel editorial to basically tell people, get rid of the useless mutants, which is why the X-Men and only a select few characters are left with mutant powers. So I thought that was pretty cool. So, and this is written by Michael Bendis and art by Oliver Coipel. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Now we're going to go to screen sharing. So since it's on YouTube, just follow along, or if you have your trade, you can follow along too. Let's get started. So House of M opens up. Wanda is giving birth to her kids. I'm trying to get this. Okay, here, there you go. So this is showing, so Wanda is like, basically warping reality a little bit because she wants her kids back. And then apparently, so what had happened was, so in the X-Men series, the island known as Genosha was destroyed, like nuked via Sentinel. And in terms of the Avengers, Scarlet Witch freaked out and killed Hawkeye, Ant-Man, and Vision. So she's kind of lost her mind, if you will. And this is pretty similar to Wandavision, and to the point where I'm pretty sure that to a loose degree, House of M was the inspiration behind Wandavision. There's like no way it wasn't. So next, then you have Charles Xavier and Magneto. Charles Xavier is there in the ruins of Genosha trying to help Wanda deal with her trauma. Magneto is like, how's it going? It's like, really, they're both concerned with Wanda to the point where she could become a threat. So next is, so we're going to Stark Tower, which is the base for the Avengers. You have Carol Danvers, Ms. Marvel. Actually, now she's being called Warbird, I believe. And we also have, I think that's, is that Sam Wilson? Yeah, I think that's Sam Wilson. And then there's Wonder Man. And then you have the Astonishing X-Men. This is a lineup from Joss Whedon's run, which, despite it being written by Joss Whedon, was actually pretty good. So we have a meeting between the X-Men and the Avengers, and you may be wondering why these two teams. Well, it's because Wanda has been a member of both groups, so it's only right that both groups get to decide her fate. So then you also have Quicksilver has begun sort of his manipulation of Wanda, and his whole thing is that he knows that an option on the table for the Avengers and X-Men that they're actually considering is to kill Wanda, because at this point, when she has reality warping powers and she's not all there's a good chance she could screw something up that leads to like widespread calamity. So that's why they're considering killing her. And obviously Quicksilver, being her brother, is like, I don't want this to happen. So, and this is Magneto going, well, maybe she deserves to die at this point because she's like a real danger to everyone. So the Avengers are basically like, okay, we may have to put her down. There's like a divide, like Frost is like, yeah, maybe we should put her down. Captain America, obviously being the optimist, is like, well, there's always a way. There's always a way for someone to come back from this. And Wolverine's like, not always. Not always an option. And Doctor Strange is like, actually, Emma Frost asked Doctor Strange, have you tried everything you could do? He says, yeah. Have you tried everything you could possibly do? Yes. Have you been able to help her? No. So at this point, they're like, and then Strange's like, but I'm still researching all the things I could do. However, Frost's like, we don't have time for you to wait for your research. And then it comes down to a vote. Now, let me see. There are a few that abstain that say, I'm not going to kill her. And then so they show up in Genosha, the ruins of Genosha. Now, once again, Genosha was this island like utopia run by Magneto that was intended. Think of it as like a proto Krakoa for those who read Jonathan Hickman's run. It's basically an island where the mutants can live in harmony away from the interference of humankind. And this was kind of echoed in the Dark Phoenix movie where Magneto had that little island that he negotiated with the government. So we'll stay here and not screw with you. You just don't screw with us. We're good. So next, let's see. Oh yeah, so Professor X was there. This is very important. So they go through Genosha. They don't see Wanda's body, so they figure, oh, Magneto knew we were coming and hit his daughter. So what they do is that they have Emma Frost, who's a psychic, when she's not in her diamond form, track them down. And then so everyone's rolling out to where Wanda is. Spider-Man turns a corner, and then boof, there's this big like white light, kind of like the world is rearranging. And then Spider-Man just wakes up in the middle of the day, and he wakes up in another reality because it turns out in this reality he had married Gwen Stacy. So we're left with what happened. Obviously, I know what happened, so I'm going to wait until we're later on in the storyline before I reveal this. But the series had fantastic covers. So next we have, all right, so this is Captain America, actually. So again, you may notice everything's kind of different in this new reality. Where we have Scott Summers and Emma Frost waking up together. Now, for those of you that don't know, somehow, back then in the Joss Whedon run, he established that Frost and Scott Summers Cyclops were a couple. So this is basically what that's showing. Then you have like Wonder Man's this famous celebrity. Ms. Marvel is like a beloved superhero. And they're like, even though she's, and what's interesting here is that they're going to establish, apparently Gambit's like this criminal thief. Apparently there are no Sentinels too. Kitty Pryde Shadowcat is a teacher of mutant children. Luke Cage runs a, I guess a gang. I guess that's what this is. And then you see Sam Wilson. Then you have Dr. Strange, who is he's a clinical psychologist, and he's talking to the Sentry. And the Sentry is basically one of Marvel's many like incarnations of Superman. And then you have Colossus, who is like just farming in Russia. Everything's so peaceful. And this is what's interesting here. So you have, I believe that's Hank Pym and Beast. Now, this Beast, for one, is a man now. Now, what Wanda did, or what happened was, so Wanda, yeah, and this is clearly where it gets to like the WandaVision like stuff. So that blast was her reshaping reality to the point where all the Marvel superheroes live in a reality where everything they want happens. Like, in other words, Spider-Man's married to Gwen Stacy. That's why he was in bed with a blonde. Beast is a dude. Ms. Marvel is like this famous superhero. Colossus can live peacefully on a farm. And another thing, now, for the longest time in the old like world, if you will, the X-Men and mutants were the minority. Now they're the majority and humans are the minority. So we kind of see a role reversal. And they even have a conversation about this, which I've seen switched many different times in the comics. So it's really cool how Bendis essentially flips the script. So next, we have Storm getting ready for a party by the House of Magnus. That's where we get the House of M, or it's also like the House of Mutants, but you get the idea. Then we see Wolverine. Now, here's the interesting thing about Wolverine. The one thing he's always wanted, because remember, Wanda gave all the superheroes everything they've ever wanted. The one thing he's always wanted is to remember his past. Now, what's interesting here is that this had the unintended effect. Now Wolverine remembers even the previous continuities past, meaning he remembers and knows that this is not the right world. what's kind of interesting is that at first he thinks he wakes up with Jean Grey, but it's actually Mystique. Apparently, Mystique is in love with Wolverine. So there's that. So he goes up to the deck of a helicarrier, and apparently Magneto is the Nick Fury of this House of M world. I'm going to call it Earth M for right now. I don't know if it's actually called this, but for the purpose of this episode, just call it Earth M. That's the end of that episode. So now we're starting to see that like the world has kind of changed significantly because of Wanda's machinations, if you will. So you see Wolverine remembers everything. Wait a second. Technical difficulties, folks. Okay, here we go. So now we're seeing Wolverine remembering everything. Like he's remembering his first appearance with the Hulk. He's remembering the Dark Phoenix saga. He's remembering his whole thing where he was hanging out with the Japanese. He remembers the previous day where they were talking about what to do with Wanda, and then them going to Genosha to deal with Wanda. So he's hanging out on the edge of a helicarrier. He's like, what did we do yesterday? And she's like, and the Mystique is like, the mission was successful. Is this about the casualties? That's not like you. Don't beat yourself up about it. They were just some human grunts. So in other words, what we're seeing here is that the mutants on Earth M have the same contempt for the humans really as the humans did for the mutants. Because remember, back then, no one would have really batted an eyelash about mutant deaths because it's like, it's just mutants. What's interesting is in Civil War, which I believe that's the storyline, that storyline comes after this. So in Civil War, what was interesting is there's this interaction between Emma Frost and Tony Stark. And Tony Stark goes to the X Mansion asking them, hey, can we count on you to help us against Steve? Or can we at least count on you to not join the war on any side, to maintain neutrality? So Emma Frost says, we're not interested in registering. So then Tony Stark tries to guilt trip her with what happened in Stanford. Now, a little bit of context. In the Civil War storyline, what had happened is, and it's all happened on national TV, the New Warriors were taking down a group of supervillains, one of whom was Speedball. Now, what happened with Speedball is that his power is to create explosions. Now, he created what amounts to a nuclear explosion in the middle of Stanford, and that killed like a ton of people. Think of it as basically the Marvel version of a Marvel version of 9/11. Now, what that led to was the government passing a law called the Superhuman Registration Act, which basically means that in order to be a superhero, you had to be trained by the government. You had to go on only missions sanctioned by the government. You had to go after heroes who wouldn't register. It's like a whole litany of bad ideas. So what had happened was half the superheroes went with Captain America, half of them went with Iron Man. And they were both trying to go around trying to find allies as they could. Doctor Strange was neutral. I think Black Panther was neutral, and the X-Men were neutral. Now, what had happened, so going back to what I was talking about. So Tony Stark basically tells Emma, well, do you have no sympathy or basically for what happened in Stanford? So Emma Frost goes, oh, please don't talk to me about sympathy. Did any of you humans like bat an eyelash when Genosha was destroyed, all those thousands and millions of mutants that were wiped out? Because that's what happened. It was like that large of a casualty count. Did any of you like react this way when Genosha was destroyed? Really? So let's not talk about like, don't you have any sympathy for the victims? Because if you notice, yeah, no one really reacted except for the X-Men. And none of the human characters really reacted that much to what happened in Genosha. Or it didn't lead to this much scrutiny on the superheroes or even on the Sentinel program, because it was the Sentinel that did it. So what also was interesting, so you notice we don't see Xavier yet, and Xavier Wolverine remembers seeing Xavier on normal Earth, or Earth 616. I'm just going to do that to differentiate the two. So what's funny is, so Wolverine has this ridiculous healing factor. So what he does to escape from Mystique, he just jumps off the helicarrier and falls and falls and falls and falls and falls. Crashes into a building, wakes up, and he's like, what the hell is going on? So and then we have like a newspaper talking about like there's this big gala going on with the House of M. You also have you go all this stuff talking about mutants and humans. You have, let's see, oh, Shang-Chi's a criminal. Spider-Man has his own son. It's basically showing about how different everything is now in this new world. Wolverine steals a motorcycle and goes to the Xavier Mansion. But what's interesting is that this mansion is actually owned by people. It's not a school on Earth M. So he leaves, and then he runs into a roadhouse. So they see like these mutants messing around with the human. And once again, role reversal, because on Earth 616, in the normal 616, this would have been reversed. It would have been a bunch of humans ganging up on a mutant and possibly beating them up. Now it's mutants ganging up on a human. And Wolverine goes in there and saves the human because, once again, he's Wolverine. And he remembers everything. So he goes to Stark Tower and he runs into his squad, which is made up of Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, basically, Mystique, Toad, Nightcrawler, and Rogue. And they're basically like, "What's wrong with you, dude?" And then he goes rogue and fights them and then escapes. Then he actually runs into Cloak, who's a member of the Resistance, which is led by Luke Cage. And Hawkeye, by the way. Now, it's interesting here. Hawkeye's dead in the normal continuity. Remember, as I mentioned in the previous story, when we got into the previously on X-Men, when Wanda went crazy, she killed like a bunch of mutants. Like she killed like a bunch of Avengers. It's like Vision died. And more significantly here, Hawkeye died. So that's interesting how Hawkeye's alive. So now we're going to part 4. There's 8 parts. I'm only going to cover the main storyline, and then at a later date, we'll do the tie-ins. But the reason why I'm starting with House of M, by the way, is because this is going to be like the catalyst behind a lot of what happens in the in the subsequent storylines and a lot of our subsequent X-Men discussions. So I just figured I have to start off talking about House of M. So next you have Genosha, which in Earth M, it's a thriving metropolis. Then you have it's a big castle. This is where the House of Magnus lives, and that's obviously Magneto. You have Magneto has grandkids, which indicates to me, like, once again, this is Wanda's kids. You know, back to the Resistance base. So they know that all of the agents of Magnus have a tracking chip in the back of their neck. So what Hawkeye does is he shoots Wolverine in the back of the neck and takes out the tracker, knowing that Wolverine probably has a healing factor. Wolverine gets back up, and then they're attacked by what are essentially Sentinels. And you notice now these Sentinels are designed to hunt humans instead of the other way around, and they're looking like Magnus troops. So then they fight, and then Cloak teleports them to a tower. And so Wolverine basically explains to them, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Like, for one thing, Hawkeye, you're dead. All of you are superheroes. It's not the way it's supposed to be. There's even like Felicia Hardy is here. And we meet this girl named Layla Miller. Now, she's an interesting character. She's basically designed to be a plot device because her mutant power is that when she looks at you, you remember your past. And by remember your past, I mean, if you look in her eyes, she will reveal to you the way she'll restore your memories from the normal 616 before it got like rewritten by Wanda. So basically what Wolverine does, what eventually this turns into, is that they break into Emma Frost and Scott Summers' home. Emma comes home and she's like, "You're robbing me? Do you know who I am?" Actually, don't answer. My psychic powers are currently stopping you from answering. And then she reads Wolverine's mind. She's like, "Wait a second. How do you know me?" And he's like, "Okay, so look at the kid." And the kid restores Emma Frost's memory of her previous life. And then they see Charles Xavier is being held hostage. And then everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, what the hell is?" And then Emma Frost's like, "What the hell is going on?" And then that's the end of that part of the storyline. Next, we're going to number 5 of House of M. So again, Emma Frost's memory of the past is restored. Hang on, it's loading. I'm getting there. All right, so what this is showing is that this is Layla Miller's mind, and this is Emma Frost explaining to her that your mutant powers is that you can like restore everyone's powers. Now, what's kind of interesting and what will be revealed. Okay, so Cyclops comes home, and what's hilarious is basically Emma Frost just aims Layla Miller at Cyclops and goes, just like we practiced. Okay, restore his memory, and then Cyclops basically barfs and is like, oh my gosh, what the hell just happened? So now everyone's like, what is going on? And then one by one, actually first they find Spider-Man in the park, and then they restore Spider-Man's memory. What's interesting is in this world, and this is kind of significant. So Uncle Ben is also still alive. So not only is Peter Parker married to Gwen Stacy, but his Uncle Ben is alive. Then he runs off because it's like psychologically, it's a lot to deal with. So then next, Wolverine goes to talk to him and goes, okay, so we have to team up and we have to stop this. We can reverse this and make it all go back to normal. And then Spider-Man goes, okay, I'm going to kill Magneto myself. And then Wolverine's like, no, you're not. I'm going to do it. There won't be anything left for you. So then one by one, Layla Miller like restores the memories of all the superheroes like Kitty Pryde, Doctor Strange, Carol Danvers, Tony Stark, Daredevil, and She-Hulk. Except they don't do Steve Rogers because they're like, hey, he's happy. Because what happened with Steve Rogers is in Earth M, he never went into the ice. In other words, he got that nice life that we saw at the end of Endgame, and he's an old man now. So everyone's like, just allow him to be in peace. All the superheroes gather at the apartment, and they're all like, okay, so what are we going to do? So their whole plan is we're going to assault the House of M until they're attacked by Wolverine's team, at which point Layla Miller restores everyone's memories again. And then they go, okay, so we're going to go to Genosha. We're going to find Charles Xavier, and then we're going to basically restore things back to normal. Back at Genosha, we see, for one thing, we have Lorna, who's Polaris. She's also another one of Magneto's children. Then we see Xavier Memorial Garden. So it makes the reader think that like Charles Xavier is dead. He's not. But I'm just going to put that in there. Next, we're going to House of M number 6. There's 8 chapters. And then after this, we'll do a general discussion about it. So what's cool is that the superheroes land back at the helicarrier, and Emma Frost uses her powers to basically make everyone else like cloaked. Everyone else that's not already an M agent, if you will, is cloaked. It's kind of like if you saw like X-Men Apocalypse when the agents are like patrolling the ruins of the Xavier Institute, and then Jean Grey basically used her psychic powers to make the guards not be able to see the mutants. That's basically that idea. So basically, Emma Frost goes, okay, set course for Genosha. At Genosha, you have all these different dignitaries arriving for this big gala, among whom is Victor Von Doom, who actually doesn't have to wear a mask because he's like unblemished. And then on the helicarrier, you have everyone talking, and then Cyclops is like, listen, guys. So ordinarily, we don't kill, or that's not an option. Now it has to be an option. Because if we don't do this, if we don't succeed, Wanda could snap even more, use her powers, and like screw this timeline up even more, to the point where she could like wipe us off of existence. So what we have to make sure that if we only get one shot at this, so this has to be perfect. So and then everyone's coming up with a plan. So he goes 3 teams. So they're going to split up into 3 teams. So he's going to say, okay, so Emma Frost asks why 3 teams, and then Cyclops responds with, because even with Emma and Doctor Strange hiding us from view, we have to assume they know we're coming. And even if they don't know, it's us. Even though they don't know it's us, they know something is wrong. I mean, it's not a bicycle we stole here. They basically stole a helicarrier. The primary goal is to find Charles Xavier if he's still with us, and for Emma to get Layla here and her powers in front of him. We'll have to wake Charles Xavier up. Cloak, it's up to you to transport them anywhere Emma tells you to. Of course. So Cyclops asks Emma, do you need anyone else, or do you need a team? She goes, no, you need everyone with you. So, and we also see all the dignitaries arriving, like the head of the Kree Empire, Storm, who leads Kenya. You also have Namor, who's my least favorite mutant. I've already talked about this. So their plan is also for Doctor Strange to try and get through to Wanda, maybe reason with her. So it's so cool is the House of Emerald like walks out. There's Wanda, there's Polaris, there's Quicksilver, there's Wanda's kids, and there's Magneto. So they emerge, and a Sentinel flies in, and then Magneto and Polaris stop it and basically deconstruct it. But inside, it's the superheroes, and they all emerge, and then it's a big brouhaha in the middle of Genosha. And they all go fight Magneto. At the same time, Cloak takes Emma Frost and Layla Miller into Genosha, and then Emma Frost sees the memorial garden to Charles Xavier, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, no, he's dead." But then Cloak is like, oh, actually, he's not dead. He's definitely not dead. I feel him. He's still alive. So next we have, again, so it's think of this as kind of like previously on X-Men type of thing in the comic books. This is not the way it is in the trade. Okay, so here's this awesome battle that they're going to reference, and they'll actually copy paste this image into Siege, because at the end of the Siege storyline, in the trade that I have, they bring up like the past of the Avengers. They bring up like the first time they were assembled. They bring up Secret Invasion. They bring up this. They bring up like lots of different like famous battles of the Avengers. So they're fighting, and then Quicksilver emerges. And then what's interesting is that Wanda starts to deconstruct, and everyone's like, "What's going on?" So Doctor Strange breaks off from the battle and goes into Wanda's room, and then he discovers Wanda, and it turns out that that Wanda that deconstructed, that was actually just a mental image that people see. She never really leaves this room with her children. And Wanda and Doctor Strange reveals something interesting. It turns out when Wanda had like basically snapped the world and turned it into Earth M, she had created Layla Miller because subconsciously she knew what she was doing was wrong, rewriting reality. So she created a being that had the mutant powers to undo it. So in other words, it was Wanda all along, if you want to play off the song. But it was also her all along that she gave the Avengers their way of undoing it. So that's very interesting. So it's showing that Wanda's not all gone. It's just she can't really control herself. And Wanda's seeing the battle. And now what's interesting is that Wanda reveals it wasn't Magneto that did this. It turns out it was Quicksilver, because even Wanda was like, maybe they should just kill me. I mean, I killed my friends. How is that forgivable? And I have all this power. I really need to, maybe I do need to die. Now, what Doctor Strange indicates is that it wasn't Magneto who manipulated Wanda, because the belief up to this point in the storyline was that Magneto somehow manipulated Wanda because Magneto wanted to live in a world where mutants were the dominant beings. So he made Wanda rewrite reality. No, it was Quicksilver. And the reason why they gave the heroes everything they wanted is because that way the heroes wouldn't fight back, because they're like, first, they wouldn't remember, and two, they wouldn't want to remember because they would have everything they've ever wanted in their lives. So yeah, it was actually Quicksilver, and then he communicates to Emma Frost. Yeah, this is the whole deal. And then actually Wanda is shot in the back by Hawkeye, because Hawkeye is really pissed. And actually, by the way, Layla Miller restores Magneto. And then Hawkeye is like, "You killed me. what are you doing? This is freaking crazy. And then the kid kills Hawkeye again. And Wanda can't control anything, any of her powers. So then Wanda freaks out. Actually, Magneto shows up, and now Magneto knows what Quicksilver did. He basically goes, "What the hell did you do, kid? You made Wanda rewrite the world." And then Quicksilver goes, "Well, they were going to kill her." And then Magneto goes, "What right had you to basically have Wanda rewrite the world so that she could live? What right had you? You basically took away her free will. You basically manipulated her into making it what you wanted, not what she wanted." And then Wanda freaks out. She shows up after Magneto basically messes up Quicksilver. And then Wanda goes, so basically, I'm actually going to read the entire Wanda monologue because it's really good. So here's what Wanda says. He wanted you to be happy. Look what you've done to us, Dad. Pietro was right. You ruined us before we even had a chance. Why would you treat your own children this way? Why? Because you actually think you're better than anyone else. The arrogance of you. You think because we're mutants, we're better than them, that we deserve to rule. That's what you wanted, and I gave it to you. So no, it was in that on Earth M, Wanda gave everyone like what they wanted. That's why mutants are the dominant species here, because that's what Magneto wanted. That's what I gave to you. But look at what it becomes. Even when you get what you want, you're still this horrible man. We're not the next step. We're not gods. We're freaks. Look at us. We're freaks, mutants. You chose this over us and you ruined us. And she goes, Dad, no more mutants. And then she uses her powers, and then reality resets again. Now, this is the last part of House of M, and then we'll have a discussion about it. So we recap that she basically said no more mutants, and then the world reboots. Hang on, it's loading. So now we wake up back on Earth 616. Everything's back to air quotes normal. Peter Parker wakes up and he's married to Mary Jane Watson. So this is obviously before Civil War. So now all the superheroes that were restored, that had their memories restored, remember the House of M timeline. So they're all like, okay, does everyone remember this? Because we were, last thing I remember is that we were on Genosha fighting everyone. Then we just wake up in our beds. What the hell just happened? And then everyone's like, and what's interesting is that Peter kind of has an anger attack, because remember, in his world, he had everything he wanted. He had Uncle Ben, he had Gwen Stacy, and everything like freaked out. So Carol Danvers goes, okay, so everything's normal now, right? And then Doctor Strange is like, not quite. So then we go to the Xavier School, and everyone's freaking out because a select group of students, a significant amount of the students have been depowered. Even the X-Men have retained their powers, because when Wanda said no more mutants and the blast came out, Emma Frost shielded all the essential mutants. In other words, she was Marvel editorial saying, save these mutants. They go find Wolverine. What's interesting about Wolverine, he still remembers his whole life, everything. So then Frost goes to Cerebro because she wants to see have the mutants been wiped out. And it turns out, so she goes into Cerebro, activates him, puts it at full power, and there's only a select few mutants left. In other words, what Wanda had done is, when she said no more mutants, she depowered most of the mutant population. There were according to Beast, tens of thousands to maybe 1 million. Now there's I think it's like the number is like 198. So let's imagine that. So in other words, the mutant race is like almost gone. Gone. So you see all these students are like freaking out, like they don't have powers anymore. They don't know what to do. And they're trying to find Charles Xavier because he's still gone. And even they're like, we have to go to Charles Xavier because he'll know if this is a permanent thing or if what Wanda did was just temporarily repress the mutant gene. Even Iceman is depowered. Obviously, he gets his powers back because you see him in like Krakoa. Because I think at one point, Wanda's like rise mutants and then she restores mutant powers. Everyone's reacting to all of a sudden the mutants losing their powers, including the Avengers. And they're like, oh no, what the hell just happened? And then we have like Strikers going, this is God's work, taking out the mutants. And everyone's like, no. And then everyone's like, okay, so apparently apparently there's not that many mutants left. And then she said those were protected by Emma's psychic defenses and my spell casting. So also in addition to Emma Frost protecting mutants, also Doctor Strange protected like the 198 mutants that were needed essentially. So anyone not protected by Frost or Strange are depowered. In other words, they're normal human beings now, which is crazy. So, and then Doctor Strange takes this as a personal failure because he says, my duties as master of the mystic arts are simple. Protect this world from an attack just like this. And I failed. And then before I keep over here. So, and what's interesting is that no one can locate Wanda. She's gone completely too. And then what's interesting is that Spider-Man asked Doctor, could you use some of that magic whammy on me? So I just totally forgot what happened. That's not how magic works, Spider-Man. Yeah, well, I'm giving you permission to go in there and scoop it right out. In other words, Spider-Man wants to completely forget the M storyline because remember, he essentially lost Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy again. So that's really like crazy. So in other words, what's interesting is they get an alert from the Avengers Mansion. This is where the Avengers used to be based, and they find out that Hawkeye's still alive. In other words, that was one of the holdovers from the M storyline, is that Hawkeye's brought back to life. Back at Genosha, Magneto is also depowered. And then the X-Men show up, the astonishing X-Men, and they're trying to find Wanda, and they're like, where is she? Where is she? And Wolverine's like, not so tough now. It's interesting how you don't have your powers, huh? Well, I still do. And then what's interesting is that no one knows where Charles Xavier is, not even Magneto. They don't know where Quicksilver, he doesn't know where Quicksilver is. He doesn't know where Wanda is. And then everyone's like, it wasn't Magneto. It was, it was Wanda. Remember, this is Wanda. So then we get a sort of like epilogue, if you will, of Wanda just hanging out in this town. And then what's interesting is that we have Dr. Hank Pym on like this news channel, and he's talking about the way about how the mutant population has just been almost wiped out. Like it's been significantly, they use the word devastating. Yeah, that's right. He says, think of the effect on our entire ecosystem. The natural order of our evolution as a species has been altered because remember, the mutants got their powers through like genetic, you can think of it as deformities, but you could also think about it as like genetic evolution. And now that's like been like, not going to happen. So everyone's like, well, this has fundamentally even changed the life of humans too. And now what's interesting is that Hank Pym also says one more thing. Here's the interesting thing. He goes, think about how many of those mutants actually controlled energy or entire energy fields or produced power sources or wielded any of the elements that affected our atmosphere or magnetic fields. And just top of the head, here's the interesting thing. those means to control energy. Energy does not like disappear; it just changes. And what Hank Pym says. Okay, so now Sir Isaac Newton's third law of physics says for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So what Hank Pym is asking is, where's that reaction? And then we see a nice little explosion in the background. So I'm wondering, what does that do? So that's House of M. So a little quick discussion. That was like, I recently read this for the first time. This has become my favorite event. Before it was Secret Invasion, because I like the whole idea about the Skrulls replacing everyone. But no, it's House of M, because I like the idea about how like Wanda basically rebooted the Marvel universe. They basically, you know what this is? This is Marvel's version of Flashpoint. In that Wanda rebooted reality to bring her kids back and everything, and that's what the Flash did. Then rebooted reality back. The only difference is, and then when she turned everything back to normal, a few things were tweaked, like mutants being like significantly dwindled and Hawkeye being brought back to life. Or in the New 52, we had the origins and like storylines of the different Justice League members and heroes brought back, sort of change. So it's pretty much like the House of M storyline. So that's really, really interesting. In fact, actually, Flashpoint is technically the DC version of this one right here, because this came out first. So Coipel's art is fantastic. Like, I love this image right here of like that big battle. I like how like in this reality, everyone has like what they've always wanted back to what they've always wanted. Like Mystique is with Wolverine. Everyone's fine. Let's see what else. Mutants are the dominant species. There are no Sentinels. Emma Frost and Scott Summers are married. Wonder Man is this big movie star. Steve Rogers got to live in peace. Ms. Marvel is this like big superhero. Spider-Man married and has a kid with Gwen Stacy. I really like about how like I like this alternate reality like storyline where and I like how basically what it turned into is Emma Frost aiming Layla Miller at different superheroes and like, hey, restore memories. So, and then you can definitely see how this inspired WandaVision, because in WandaVision, Wanda restores reality, changes reality in the small, except this time it's a much smaller scale, in order to bring Vision back to life and give them this fantastic like suburban life where everything's okay, guys. So then we have I'm trying to see what other interesting storylines we have here. All right. But basically, yeah, I found this storyline to be very like, yeah. So anyway, in that storyline, it's Wanda going crazy that kind of caused that small town to be turned into like her playground and everything. And like her essentially rebooting reality. And she would have done that. That would have been interesting if they rebooted reality in order to bring in younger actors for like Captain America, Iron Man, and all that stuff. And in other words, they used that as like a proto Flashpoint, the WandaVision show. They could have easily brought in like mutants and all that. But of course, they didn't want to bring in the X-Men, which makes no sense. But anyway, so going back to this, I also like how when you think it's like Magneto who did it, it was Quicksilver to save his sister from being killed. Just reboot reality. So everything's fine. You have what you want, so you're not like crazy. Everyone else has what they want, so they're not likely to fight against us. Except the whole giving people what they want kind of screwed this whole scenario, because Wolverine remembers everything. And I like how but what's interesting is that I'm still gonna I still have to look this up. I don't know where Professor Xavier is, because he was not in the rebooted reality or in the restored reality. So that's pretty interesting about where he is. If you guys know, just drop it in the comments and I'll be sure to read that. So let's see what else. I'm trying to find interesting things. I liked how the Sentinels were basically rebuilt by Magneto, essentially Magneto, or like his version of Shield, and they hunt what are called sapients, like mutants, if you will, in this world. And those the mutants are the dominants. And I like how everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, Ms. Marvel is such a great superhero, even if she's just a sapient." So in other words, they didn't make it so all superheroes are mutants. They just made it so the mutants are the dominant species, and like everyone still respects the normal humans, even if they're like, even if they're sapiens. It's just super cool. I like that. And this gets into my whole thing. I like Elseworlds like storylines because this seems to me like an Elseworlds, and I hope that they do like they make this its own Earth, because I think it'd be really cool to like have an actual Earth M, or like just to give it any number, because there's like over 1,000 Marvel Earths where like all the superheroes got what they wanted, and it's like this alternate reality, kind of like how the Flashpoint Earth became like an alternate reality. That would be really cool if they did that. So, and there's definitely a lot of potential for them to explore this in the future. Like, it would be cool if they did like an actual House of M, like if they did like WandaVision, but on a larger scale, like in a Scarlet Witch movie. But then when she like restores reality back, that's how we bring in the mutants. She could easily say, "I don't want to be alone anymore." That they could retcon it that she's actually a mutant, and then they could basically say, "We want, I don't want to be alone anymore." And then we have the X-Men, we have Magneto, we have all the different mutants, and they can just either use the younger actors from like the Dark Phoenix storyline and such, or just recast everyone. They probably would recast Wolverine. But so we'll see about that. But yeah, anyway, so that's House of M. Again, it's like my number one favorite Marvel storyline. It has supplanted Civil War and Secret Invasion as my number one favorite Marvel storyline. Be on the lookout for this Friday when we talk about Black Widow, because we're going to be talking ample about that movie and about the questionable creative choices that they used in relation to Taskmaster, because that was the worst. That's on the level of sewing Deadpool's mouth shut in X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's on that level of stupidity. I don't even care about the gender bending part. That I could take if they kept it to the character, but no. They had to completely destroy the character. That is destroying the character when you take away like the wisecracking jokes, and then they didn't even do the whole Taskmaster shtick that much, where he sees and copies you. That's essentially my problems with it. Lyle and I will talk about it. Maybe we'll have a guest on who saw Black Widow, and then we'll discuss our thoughts on that storyline. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Be on the lookout for next week when we talk about, I'm thinking we're going to talk about X-Men's Second Coming, because that's like my favorite X-Men storyline right now. And then at some point, we will be starting a discussion on the Jonathan Hickman X-Men run. I got Hawks and Pox coming in the mail tomorrow, and then we'll do all of the Dawn of X storylines and the Reign of X and such. We'll do it like what we'll do is we'll read through it. Each week we'll do an issue. And then even if you've read it, we can you can watch and like review it, or if you haven't read it, you can read it with me and we'll talk about it. And that's pretty much all I got left in terms of X-Men stuff. Once again, we have Black Widow coming out, our discussion of Black Widow. We have tomorrow should be our next news segment. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this, and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.